McTague for Fly-Carpin. I'm going to tie my Primordial Carp-Stew. Start with the recipe, and it starts off with an SL45 size 8, 140 denier black ultra thread. I'm going to lay down a small base and then add some 1/8 inch black Spirit River Dazzle eyes, and we're going to go ahead and put those fairly close to the eye of the hook and crowd it a little bit, maybe with just an 1/8 inch gap. We're going to latch those eyes down really well because we're not going to use any glues to keep them from spinning. Work the thread back just a little ways down the bend of the hook, and then we're going to add some 0.25 lead wire. I'm going to use 8 wraps here because I'm going to use this fly in a river, and you typically need quite a bit more weight when you're dealing with current to get your fly down. If I'm in still water, I might tie this fly with 3 or even 5 wraps of lead instead of 8, and sometimes I will switch to bead chain eyes as well. Okay, work our thread back, and we're going to add 4 speckled sexy legs from MFC. This is a flexi floss, which is extremely durable. The 4 strands sticking out the back are going to be our tail. I'm going ahead and splay those out. And the strands facing forward are going to be our belly. And work our thread forward just a little ways and create a hinge point, and then fold those 4 strands back and latch those down to be out of our way to build the body. Next, we're going to add some Swisher's rubber dub in a dubbing loop. First, I'm going to make the loop about 10 inches long. We want quite a bit of extra thread sticking out of the loop in order to spin with. And the thread's relatively cheap. It doesn't hurt us to make a pretty long loop here. Work our thread forward and then start loading the loop. So I'm going to take fairly large clumps of rubber dub, and then I'm going to scrape or kind of fold out, rub out smaller sparse clumps. And if I rub out these small clumps like I'm showing here, that tends to align the rubber legs in one single direction, and then when you load the loop you can have your rubber legs kind of sticking out to the side. Also, when you rub it out, it helps you to get kind of really sparse little clumps. You almost want your clumps to be transparent. Right? Now we're going to go ahead and load these until we have about 5 to 6 inches in the loop, and that 5 to 6 inches is just a little bit wider than a fist perhaps, and that's going to give us enough to build this fly. I'm going to go ahead and spin it up, and if you leave enough thread out, you don't really have to take the time to grab a separate tool. You just spin it, and wrap it around my finger, and I'm going to rough up the material that I have in the loop, kind of pull out any loose material that isn't really captured well. Now you're going to be shocked at how much material you're going to pull out, particularly when you first start doing this. It takes a little while to get the hang of loading the loop to where really you don't pull everything out. Alright, now we're almost going to palmer the rubber dub on. Just get to a little bit here, and you'll start to see that for each wrap I'm going to reach down and I'm going to pull back the material that's already on the hook so that I do not overwrap it, so that each new wrap is going over bare hook or lead and pushing the previous wraps back towards the aft end of the fly. This builds kind of a swept back profile and makes sure that all of our material is actually contributing to the bushy bugginess of the fly and not getting just covered. I'm going to go ahead and trim out the excess portion of the dubbing loop. And you can see that there's a little bit of a gap between where I stopped and the eyes. We're going to fill that in just a bit, but first I'm going to take my hook and go on ahead and brush through. I'm going to take my scissors, and brush through the rub-a-dub. That's going to break any folded over legs and kind of get everything brushed out and cleaned up a little bit. Now we're going to add some red squirrel abdomen, SLF. And we're just going to add this in a normal dubbing application. We're not going to make this dubbing really tight. We're not going for a really fine, tightly wound dubbing. A little loose. And we're going to use this to build a collar behind the eyes. It's going to kind of clean up the front end of the fly, sweep back some of that rub-a-dub, and create a color contrast. And specifically, it's intended to at least create something of a representation of an egg sac on a crayfish. Okay. So now we're going to reach back, grab those forelegs that, as I mentioned, are going to be the belly. We're going to part the rub-a-dub, fold it down, and bring the belly over. That's going to create less drag on the top of the fly than on the hook side of the fly, and that's going to contribute to the hookup portion of how the fly swims. Next we're going to add some dark olive rabbit. This particular rabbit has a bit of a mottled color to it, which I like. The color varies along the length. I might also sometimes go in with a Sharpie and mark up the rabbit if it's a really consistent color, to give it a little bit more of a mottled appearance. Okay, so we've added that rabbit, and we're going to go ahead and clean up the head. Whip finish twice because I don't use any glues or adhesives in my carp flies because of scent. And the fly is complete. And trim it out and ready to go. I do quite a few different color combinations, and if you would like to, you can follow the link to see how this fly behaves in the water.